In today's video, we continue on with our NHL offseason plan series. We're now on the 29th ranked team from the NHL's regular season, the San Jose Sharks. Will we see any blockbuster moves? Will we see significant change? What will they do? We'll discuss the offseason for the Sharks coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. In case you're new to this series, I want to quickly recap here how these videos are structured. So first up, we're going to do a recap of the 22-23 NHL regular season. Take a look at how the team did. Take a look at some key stats. We're going to analyze what some moves were that they made during the season. Look at their salary cap space. What do they have available going into the offseason? How many players are already under contract? Who's on expiring deals? So the restricted free agents, the unrestricted free agents, and all that internal business they may need to take care of. And then we're going to analyze what I feel are the top burning questions facing the franchise as the offseason gets into the full swing of things here. So let's first up recap the 22-23 season for the 29th ranked San Jose Sharks. Obviously, it's a tough year when you're low in the standings, that near the bottom. It was a rough year. They had a record of 22, 44, and 16 for 60 points, which is pretty weak. They scored 234 goals, which was 25th best in the league. They gave up 321 goals, which was 30th best. Overall, it's a team plus minus of minus 87. That certainly needs vast improvements if you're going to have any chance of getting into the playoffs. Power play was pretty weak at 18.4%, which is 25th best. The one positive stat, though, that was actually pretty strong for the team was penalty killing, 82.4%, which was the 8th best in the NHL. Obviously, the Sharks are having our first full seasons for a new GM, Mike Greer. First full season for head coach David Quinn. So they obviously are getting acclimated with their new position, leaving their mark on the team. We've seen a significant trade of the Sharks near the deadline, trading one of their top goal scorers and top young players in the NHL, Timo Meier, who was a pending restricted free agent who was due a massive qualifying offer, was traded to the New Jersey Devils. So obviously that brought back, it's hard to say what that return looks like right now. Some of these trades are hard to really grade immediately when you're mainly dealing in future assets and younger players and draft picks. We'll see. But obviously that was a significant move for the Sharks this year. Now, salary cap space, they're not in the greatest situation. I do wonder if they'll find ways to improve this. But they have 16 NHL players under contract for next year or beyond. They have $68.5 million tied up with those contracts, which leaves out $14.9 million available according to CapFriendly.com, based on the salary cap increasing for next season by $1 million to $83.5 million. So obviously that's what we're factoring in right now. That could be different, but that's all that's guaranteed from the NHL as we get closer to the offseason. Obviously the Sharks are going to be making some moves, but first, before they get into the draft and trades and everything like that, we're going to take a look at their internal business that they have to take a look at first. So who are on expiring contracts? The restricted and unrestricted free agents on this team. Under the RFA category, we do have Noah Gregor. We have Jacob Peterson, Fabian Zetterlund. He was one of the players that came over in the Meier trade. Evgeny Svechnikov and Jonah Gatchevich. I would think that there's a decent chance that all or most of these guys are going to receive qualifying offers and likely land to new deals in some capacity. Gregor, I would think for sure, Zetterlund, and the other two, Svechnikov and Gatchevich. Peterson, I'm a little less certain on, but I think there's a good possibility they could, because none of these guys are going to cost a ton of money. So we'll see where that works out, but I would suspect that they're all players the Sharks can work with in some capacity. On the unrestricted free agent side, I don't know that anybody's really coming back. They got Marcus Nudavara, who was on into reserve a long time. A couple of goalies, Aaron Dell and James Reimer. I think they both move on. Jeffrey Veal, who's not even getting a lot of NHL action. He's a Group 6 free agent. So he's becoming a UFA at an earlier age than normal because he didn't get enough NHL games. And then there's Andreas Janssen, who was also part of that trade with New Jersey as well. I'm not sure that they have interest in him long term. I think it was just more of a cap move, money-wise, to come over from New Jersey to make things work out. So some or all of the RFAs will be back. I'm not sure that any of the UFAs will be, and we'll see where things go. So with all that said, now we know where the cap sits. We know their internal business. We know how things finish. What are the top burning questions, the main things that this team needs to focus on going into the offseason? Well, we know we're not going to see any changes in leadership. We know there's a brand new coach and GM, like I said, just completing their first year. So we're not going to be seeing any changes in that regard. They're going to be making additional moves here to leave their mark. One of the big questions for me, though, is who are going to be the goaltenders next year? I mean, they still have Capo Kakkonen. Kakkonen's going to be in the mix, and most likely, at least in some capacity. I don't think he's any more than a backup, though, at the NHL level. James Reimer, I suspect, likely moves on. Dell's moving on. They're going to need to figure out goaltending. So that's going to be a big piece of the puzzle. Now, there could be, there's a decent amount of goalies that are on the UFA market that they could look into. For example, former Shark Alex Stalock, would he be having any interest in going back to San Jose? He actually had a pretty decent year in Chicago, given all things considered in front of the team in front of him. I don't know if there's any interest there. I mean, long term, he's not the answer in goal by any means, but he could be somebody who they bring in as a stopgap. I don't know how competitive Greer and Quinn intend to make the Sharks team next year. To me, they have a lot of work to do. There's a lot of reasons why this team didn't succeed and didn't do well, and it's not going to be easy. I don't think you can go from where they are now to likely going into a playoff spot as quickly as next year. That's just not realistic. It's going to be steps here at a time. They're still not done tearing things down before they build it back up. So we'll see. But they need to figure out who the goalies are. And I don't know the answer to that. But they're definitely going to be in the goalie market. You're either going to make a trade or sign a free agent to bring in another goaltender with experience. That much we can probably say for sure. Now, will we see an Erik Karlsson trade? Erik Karlsson has been in the rumor mill for quite some time. And based on what we've seen for his play, based on what he's made for comments, personally, I think Erik Karlsson really wants to be traded. I think he really wants to get himself into a more of a contending team. He knows that he's in his early 30s now. He doesn't have a ton of time left in the NHL. Obviously, he's not that close to retirement either. He has a lot of term on his contract. But I think all players start to see, the end, so to speak, or they know they're closer to the end than the beginning once they start hitting that age. And he's in a spot where he's personally had a solid individual career. He's made lots of money, but he wants to win a Stanley Cup. And he's not going to do that in San Jose. And he knows that in the next 3, 4, 5 years that he's got left of his contract, that they're not going to be contending. So it sounds like he really wants to move. And to me, I think this record-breaking season that he put up this past year, 100-point defenseman, which is a rare feat in the NHL, I kind of wonder if he had extra motivation trying to play at the highest level that we've ever seen, trying to get himself traded. Now, an Erik Karlsson trade, though, is not going to be easy. I think there's probably a lot of other teams that would love to have him on their team, but the contract is very problematic. He's making over $11 million. We don't know how much San Jose is willing to retain. They'd have to retain money for sure. I'm going to say somewhere in that 40 to 50% range. And I know I've seen some NHL reporters say the San Jose Sharks, I think, are getting hung up on the return price more than the cap flexibility. Like if they retain, 40, let's say they retain, I don't know, maybe $4 million on this contract, for example, and another team has to pay him like $7 million, which is a lot more reasonable. That's still $7 million more in cap space that they have available. Now, they're going to probably expect teams to pay a bigger price for holding back some money, which already makes sense to some degree. But based on the asking prices that we had heard before, and selling the price was absolutely astronomical. But obviously, whoever trades for Karlsson, if this happens, is taking on a lot of risk. I mean, it's difficult to say, is he going to be able to have this kind of season again? Can he continue for more than 1 year, like for multiple years, to continue to play at that level? I mean, you would like to think so. I mean, I hope for his sake that he can and he will. I love Erik Karlsson. I've been a huge fan of his since he's been in the NHL. I hope he can, but there's just no secret that stats and everything don't lie, that it doesn't look promising for that to continue at that kind of high level. So if a team acquires him and suddenly he's, say a 40, 50-point player, well, that's a huge difference from 100 points. So it comes with risk. Now, even at his peak before, he could have been a solid, if he can be a solid, even 60 to 70 point defenseman consistently the rest of his career, or most of it, that's still really good production, mind you. So, I don't expect him to be a 100-point defenseman every year, but how far of a drop off are we going to see, and where's he going to come from? Obviously, if he goes to another team, he's going to have different ice time, different role. And I think that was part of the problem before when Brent Burns was still there, is that it just wasn't enough of a role for him. He had to share too much of that power play time and, those top minutes in the offensive zone, that he just wasn't getting it done. So we'll see. But the Erik Karlsson trade is very much possible. It's very much going to be discussed a lot, I'm sure. Whether or not it happens is another thing, but I'm sure it's right at the top of their agenda to see if they can't figure it out, because I think the team and the player both would like to make it happen. But we'll have to wait and see. Now, could other veterans be moved? I mean, Kevin Labanc is a name that I think we're going to probably see traded if they can. Labanc has one more year left at 4.7. It's no secret that the team hasn't been thrilled with his production, and it might be best for a first start. Kind of wonder about Captain Logan Couture. I mean, that's going to be complicated as well. Not quite to the level of Karlsson, but he's got 4 years left at $8 million. I mean, San Jose might have to eat a little bit of money on that one too. But again, it's a little easier to move than Karlsson, but, still a complicated trade nonetheless. I mean, obviously, Tomas Hertl just recently signed long-term. I think he wants to be there. I don't know how Couture feels about things. Maybe he would like to ride things out in San Jose. I'm not sure. But Labanc is another one. Karlsson, they need goaltending. And then, of course, they're going to have a pretty high pick in the 2023 NHL Draft. We don't know exactly where they're going to select, of course. They have the fourth best odds winning the lottery and getting the odds to pick Connor Bedard at number 1, or maybe Adam Fantilli at number 2. Either of those players would be franchise-altering for sure. Bedard obviously being the stronger prospect at this point in his career, but still, even Fantilli would be a massive jump. If they end up picking in the number 4 spot, where they're, based on the standings now, even, that's still going to get him a really good player. They could end up possibly dropping to 5 or 6. So we'll have to see, but you're looking at a variety of players. Either way, they're going to get a real good player that could, help in their lineup either right away if they get a little bit of luck, or maybe in a year or two if they're not quite as lucky and they have to, pick in that 4, 5, 6 range. But no matter what, they're going to get something good. So the Sharks, to me, are going to be a very interesting team here. I don't think Mike Greer's afraid to tear things down. I don't think he's afraid to kind of go more into a rebuild mode. But the biggest thing we're going to see, though, is Erik Karlsson. Can they find that trade? Is this time up in California? Is it time for him to head back maybe to a Canadian market where he can contend for a Stanley Cup? We'll have to wait and see. So let me know your thoughts and expectations for the Sharks in the offseason, and we'll talk about it further down in the comments. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with the latest news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.